Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today's a project that a lot of folks have been asking about, and I've been waiting for a reel to come into my shop. It's the 309 series, the Penn Peer. It's the larger of the level winds, and a lot of folks have looked at my 209 210 video, and although these are in that same series, these are different reels, and folks have asked me, can I do one? So I just got one in the shop, and I'd be pleased to do that. And we'll take you through this one. So it's not just a larger reel with the same internals. It is a different internal setup. This one is prized. A lot of folks that do ocean trolling and like the level wind feature enjoy this particular reel. And the reason for it is it's higher speed, and it has the Jig Master gear set in it as opposed to the Long Beach gear set of the 209. So it's a classic, if you will. It's a nice reel, and it's one that will last a long time with the service done on a regular basis. And that's what we'll show you how to do today. So I start by taking off the gear side handle, which is held in place by a set screw and a handle screw. And then I take off the side plate, and usually it's easy, and sometimes it's not. If you have a spinning post, which is what I have here, use a little piece of kitchen scrubby to protect that post while you hold it with a pliers, and then you can usually get the screw free. Most of the time that tells me the reel hasn't been serviced in a while. If there's been a little bit of corrosion on there, for sure, and usually that tells you it's probably beyond the service time. So what is service time? I like to say if you're not fishing heavily, you should do it once a year. If you're fishing heavily, that is like you're out every week, two trips maybe, then I would suggest a mid-season tune-up as well, just to keep it fresh, particularly if you're in salt water. Salt water just has a way of evaporating the oils that are in these gears, and especially along here on that track for the worm and the line guide. So go ahead and do that, on twice a year if you fish heavily. All right, these are the pieces and the parts in no particular order. We'll take them all out, and I'll kind of go through how you do what as you go along there. We have a guide. We have the worm gear, a line guide, a pawl sits inside the screw plate here. We'll show you how to service that in a little bit. We have all these screws. These screws have a little bit of rust and corrosion or salt buildup or something there. I'm just going to take WD-40 and give them a squirt just so that gets inside the threads, and when we go back to put it in, it'll serve as lubrication. This is the ferrule, the gear sleeve. And then we have this side. Now we don't need to do much with this side. I'm going to leave it attached. For now, I'm just going to clean up a little bit of the chrome piece. Underneath this gear here, all we have is a brass gear. We have a plastic transition gear here that runs off of it runs off the back of the spool. So if you see the spool here, there's a secondary gear. There's a click ratchet and a secondary gear here. This secondary gear drives the plastic gear. The plastic gear interfaces with the brass gear. The brass gear drives the line guide. So somebody just sent me a note asking, is this the proper setup in the back? And it is. All that is the throughput bearing here. I'll take that out so you can kind of see the way that runs. And you can see all we have is a big hole there to the back. This is the bearing. Put a little bit of blue grease into that. It's a pivot point for our spool. I'll just reassemble that. That would be a normal piece of service anyway. And then what we want to do is we want to rotate this to make sure that all of the teeth are in the plastic gear, because that has a habit under load to break a tooth, particularly if you're hung up on a rock or something, snagged. And while I'm doing that, I'm also checking, it's rare, but I'm checking to make sure that all the teeth that come together here with that brass gear are also in place so that there's no skip there. That's the biggest problem with a level wind reel, is that this one breaks, the plastic one breaks. If you get hung up there, what will happen typically is that you'll put too much pressure on it. And when you put pressure on it, you're going to strip that plastic gear. So a lot of folks then wind up taking the line guide out and disabling the reel. Let's go over to the gear side, and then we'll work that line guide for the piece of service there. So this is a Jigmaster gear set underneath. You can't remove the bridge without removing the side plate here. So I just generally grab a screwdriver and just try and pry gently to free that up. You just kind of got to go around a little bit. There we go, we start to hear it there. That's also an indication it hasn't been serviced in a while. There's some particulate, probably salt spray or something underneath here. That's just kind of making it stick and hold there. So I'm going to just kind of wipe that down here so I can get some of that junk out of the way. And now we can get over and service this. Now, this service is very similar to a Jigmaster service or a Long Beach service, if you're familiar with those. You have the 4 bridge screws. The 2 on the top are partially threaded. The 2 on the bottom are fully threaded. And you'll notice as I'm doing this, and I like to mention in almost all my videos, I wear a protective glove on my non-working hand. That way I keep the oils and grease and stuff off of that. You never know what's going to be in these reels, and I just like to add a little bit of safety there. There is a spring that's holding an anti-reverse dog, so I have my hand cupped as I push the bridge through. Hopefully we'll be able to capture that spring. And there it is. It's fallen in here. So that's a nice little trick to have if you're doing this for the first time. Know that these things can pop, usually do pop, and if you cup your hand, you can generally keep it in the vicinity. One of the viewers out there suggested opening it up inside of a plastic bag, and you know what? I have no problem with that. If you take this one's not big enough, but if you take a plastic seal case bag and open it up in there, you've localized where that spring can fly. All right, this is a gear set that we've seen before. We're going to do a general service on this one. This one's running fine, but I'm going to take the gear sleeve off just to show you how that works. We're going to take a pin. I use a little end of an awl. It actually was one of these at one point. You have to push a pin through. That pin is riding in a groove, but it keeps it attached to the bridge. I'll lay that right there just because we're showing you. We want to make sure it's clean. Once you do that, you can remove the gear sleeve that has the washer on it. That doesn't need to be removed. A little bit of just steel wool will clean out the grooves. That's the biggest problem on these. If you start getting sluggish, typically what happens is you've got buildup in this channel here or buildup in the reel overall. I think that's why Penn tells you to oil this as opposed to lube it. And the oil is actually right on the outside of the handle screw. It says oil on there, and that handle screw attaches to the inside of the gear sleeve here. So we're good with this. I'm going to go put that back on. We've cleaned it. I'm going to grab that pin and put that right back into the hole from whence it came. And when you reinsert these things, you got to make sure it clears that little ridge there, otherwise you won't be able to get the main gear back on. All right, drag service time. We're going to push the drags out then. These are hard fiber washers here. Looks like probably the originals that came with them, but they're fine. You just want to make sure that they're clean. That's the biggest issue with these, is that they get some accumulation, and if they get accumulation, then you're going to wind up with a rough drag. Same thing with the metal washers. Now, I just got a question the other day, can I use the brass washers with Carbonex? And the answer is sure. The only reason that you might want to replace these if these are scarred or rutted or some other way not smooth, then you're going to make sure that you get the 2 washers in there. All right, where's the 3rd washer? Tell me that somebody repaired this and didn't have the 3rd washer there. Well, you always find something, don't you? So this is missing a washer. So we should have a metal We'll go get one. I have them. You get a metal, then you've got the mid washer, then you've got, oh, here it is, it's stuck. There you go. That's the answer there. Okay, so when this happens, this is because it hasn't been lubed, the lube is worn and it got stuck. Take some steel wool on that and smooth that down again, because something got caught there. And in this case, even though this is a hard washer and doesn't normally require any kind of oiling, I'm going to put a drag grease on that one just to re-lube that, just so that it's got slide to it that should have had. Now, these washers kind of are like the old brake linings, so that's why I say you generally don't need the thing. It's a hard kind of asbestos-like one. The newer ones, I did order replacements should I have needed them. The newer ones are the HT100s. They've got a metal, they got two fabrics and a like a Teflon interior. Those do get the grease. Okay, so this service is done then. Let's just grab the top here. We're going to make sure that this side plate gets cleaned. So we're going to take off the jack, take the yoke and the gear out. Make sure it's clean in here. There's two springs that belong in here as well. Take those out, and I'm just leaving them here. Most of you know that I use the parts bucket, but I'm going right back in with these because this appears to be relatively clean. There's some junk in the channels, so take the time to clear that out. And as you can tell, I'm using a cotton swab there. You can also use the paper towel. If you're doing this, be aware that you've got parts on the table there, so don't let that throw go too far in terms of your muscling this stuff. Just use it enough. So I'm going to coat the inside and outside of the bearing back there. I'll put a little bit of blue grease onto the eccentric. Put a drop of oil inside the bearing there too while I'm at it. Okay, now we can go and just remove this for a moment, make sure that this is clean. It's not, it has some buildup, and again, I don't know when the last time it's serviced, but whatever greases and oils were in there, they built up over time. So I just want to clean that out and replace that with some fresh blue grease. I keep referring to it as blue grease, and it is, but it's made by Penn Precision Reel Grease. And you don't need to use Penn grease on Penn reels. You can use anything that's designed for a fishing reel, so any manufacturer's grease or plenty of aftermarket products, like you saw the dry grease that I put on before. That's a Cal's Universal Dry Grease. Just make sure they're designed for fishing reels. If you're using something other than fishing reels grease, and I've seen a lot of crazy stuff inside reels over time, chances are that it'll be too thick or too thin. If it's too thick, it's going to clog your reel. If it's too thin, it's going to wear away quicker, and that'll provide you the lubrication you need. So spend the couple of dollars that it is on the reel grease. Okay, this is back in place the way it should be. We're going to insert the bridge now. I'm going to turn it so that it's roughly perpendicular to the final stage. I'm going to grab the fully threaded screw. Place that on the inside. I'll get the dog, the anti-reverse dog. Sits in like that, laying on a tooth. I grab that spring, which is always a nasty little thing. It is a spring. It's known to shoot. Be very careful as you go to reinstall these that you don't lose that spring. If you do, you spend a lot of time and a couple of days probably waiting for a replacement spring. So that's how it seats. You can see it there as I close up the reel. And then we want to align with that screw. Once we align, it's a quick starter turn. I don't drive those all the way home yet. Partially threaded screws belong up top. That's what those springs ride on. So don't put the threaded ones in there. You can catch those if you're not careful. Parts bucket always is a good place. You'll see I've used it there. Good place to store your pieces and parts. That way you know where to go look for them and it's time to reinstall. And then we got one on the back end here for that last spring. And this is why I don't tighten them down all the way. There's a little bit of play in the bridge, and you need to make sure that you've got them all lined up before you can start to screw them down. Okay, there we go. We got that. So now we go kind of in the next pattern here to keep the torque. And what we want to do, for some reason my camera just stopped, X pattern on these 4, tighten them down. I think that's probably where we ended there when I noticed the click. On the back end then we just want to get a little bit of lube onto the jack. That'll enable that to glide smoothly. And then we can reinstall that trim ring. And what I'm going to do here, this is the other side of the worm gear. I'm going to take this out completely. You'll see why in a moment. That one was over tightened. It's a thumb screw and a spring. I don't know why it's been tightened down as much as it has, but it has. You can see the thumb screw spring and a little burring on the side. Then we can place the side plate back on. You want to line the holes up. I'm not lined at the moment. Seen some folks actually put a screw through one of the posts. That's a good way to line it up for sure. Sort of like this. Like that too, just to get the alignment correct. Press down on this. And I'm going to grab that steel wool again, just work off some of that little accumulated tarnish. If you needed to polish it up a little bit, you could use a metal polish. In this case, this is a chrome polish for an automotive use. And that'll just help take off some of that surface cosmetic stuff. Don't get it on the bridge that is an abrasive. You don't want to just go ruin all of the oil and stuff that you just did. But that's good. You could also, of course, do that off of there. Okay, I like to line this up then. We know we've got a couple of things going on here. We've got a spinning post here, which has got the groove in it for the main gear. I'm sorry, for the line guide. And I'm just going to start that. I don't like to drive anything home. Just 1 or 2 turns just to hold that in place. That's enough. Then you want to get down and you want to get the line guide in place. Now the line guide's got 2 sides. It's got a short side and a long side. The short side faces you. And again, I'm just going to run a quick little piece of steel wool in there. This is 4/0 steel wool. It's the smoothest or the finest of the steel wools. Don't go anything beyond that. Okay, now we can put the line guide into the line guide holes. You'll notice that there's 2 dimples on each end. I'm going to grab that, insert in one side, then come back and hold pressure on that as you insert in the other side. So now you can see it. If you try to do this without that little holding screw there, it's more difficult. If you try and do this with the line guide inserted, it's very difficult. Okay, I'm just looking for the bottom screw. The bottom screw is shorter than the other crossbar screws. You'll know that when you put it in and you see that there's not much play in that. I'm just going to get that bottom screw set. I'm trying to get it set. There we go. There's a bottom screw on the other side. We'll put that one in next. Okay, then we can come back and fill in the other 2 screws. Tighten those bottom ones in. There was a little bit of play in the case with that trim ring that didn't fully seat. You can see it here. There's a little bit of space, but the screw pulls that back in. Okay, now let's go over and service that worm. So we got a worm, we got a line guide, we got a pawl. There's your line guide, worm, pawl. There's a little screw that holds the pawl in. And take that out. The pawl sits in there in the cap. You can see it here. It comes out of the cap. Put that in, just put a drop of oil on it because that does have to swing. So I'm flooding that case and I'm going to put that right back in. Now I guess the next part is probably subject to debate. Generally I just oil the worm gear. But some folks prefer to put the lube on it. And I tell them that's fine. Just as you go to do that, make sure that you check it frequently because you don't want to get in a situation where the stuff starts gathering contamination. Now you see how I'm playing here. There's those two teeth have to seat in the ribs, and the only way you kind of do it is just kind of playing with it until you can get the fully threaded screw down. That's when you know it's kind of aligned properly. I think I pretty much have got it. Well, still playing around a little bit. There you go. Now I'm down tight. So make sure you're tight. And then once you do that, you should be able to turn the worm here and find that it goes back and forth. I'm going to do what I do and let other folks put the grease on there. I just like to oil it. Okay, so now we got two sides to this. This is the front side, I hope. We got a square drive. The square drive goes in that gear on the backhand side. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. This one needs to loosen up. The top piece with the channel that the top of the line guide rides in. So here's why I take that off. I take that off so that I can slip the main part of that gear under and through like that. Then I can come back the other way. Oops, I lost it. Come back the other way, set the line, the square into that drive there, and then turn the top piece until you can seat that top of the line guide in place, and then you can tighten the top piece down. In this case I just ran further than I should have. And now you can take that other piece, which is the piece that holds the line guide in on this side. Put a little bit of oil on that. And this has got to get centered. And tightened. Let's go back and finish the top here, and then once we start turning, we'll make sure that we have that all set up properly. So back to the sleeve spacer, or the ferrule as I call it. Work the star drag on. So the only difference between this and the other reels that we've worked on is that line guide feature. And because there's a couple of other little things going on there, you have that channel piece up top, you have the drive components of it, you have a couple of different things. You just need to take your time and you need to be patient. That's it. I'm just trying to hold the sleeve as I put that down. So I use this because it's non-marring. It's a Phillips head. If you use a flat blade, you could run into trouble with that. Let's give it a spin. Let's see if we're working. Okay, so I have the square is properly seated there, so I can tighten this down a little bit. You have a little bit extra play in the spool, so you want to tighten the spool bearing. You want a little bit of play, but not a lot. That's good. We got a nice functioning reel there. I'm just going to make it pretty by taking that steel wool again with that little bit of metal polish on it. Finish this off. We already put the oil on that shaft there. If you didn't, this would be a good time to do that. And then grab the spool or the handle screw. Keep wanting to call this a nut because of the top on it, but it's actually a screw. All right, tighten the drags down. Grab the handle wrench to set it. You want to make sure that you have the little indentation aligned with the set screw hole. Put that set screw on. And we've got a 309 reel that's ready for some big fish. And ready to go for a long time to come. With nice fresh drag service, fresh service on the line guide, and fresh cleanup around. So I hope that that answers the questions for those of you that have been looking for the 309 reel and how to service it. If you liked the video, please indicate that. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.